Hello, and welcome to the Angry Ewok channel. Today we'll be discussing onagers again. Today the focus will be on defensive tech to keep your ships from dying. As your fleet approaches the onagers, you're going to have to pick one ship, like we showed in video 2. There's a ship that kind of deploys in the middle of the onager's flight path and says, alright, you can shoot at me, or you can turn your arcs left or right to shoot at my other stuff, but if you do that, you're going to be ignoring me. So this needs to be a ship that's offensively threatening, but also has the tankiness that it can take that shot, because you're going to activate this ship early, and you're going to expose it to fire, because you don't want your smaller ships to be exposed to as much fire. And like we also said, thermals and ECMs are a big part of that. The ability to spend 1 to 2 defensive tokens at extreme range to reduce the incoming damage is a huge part of that ship's doing its job. ECM is no good to you if it's exhausted. So you take that first shot, ECM taps. The second shot, ECM needs to be back online in order to take it, or it's probably a 2 to 3 damage difference in most cases, the ability to use that token or not against an onager. So a big part of your fleet is having a plan to keep that ready. You can always just take a token and bank a token. I don't like doing that, because I would rather, if I know that's going to be my tank ship, I typically will key up a repair command, and that's 2 shields that we're recreating or shunting from somewhere else. So I'd rather have that repair on there. It's very disheartening for an onager to fire, do 4 damage, after all the evading and bracing and yada yada, and then they repair 2 of them. That onager has just done 2 damage, and that's very disheartening for them. But the only way to keep that ECM ready is you got to get a token coming in from somewhere. I would always advise, if you're playing a Civil War faction, to have a flotilla with a comms net somewhere, and probably to have a Hondo Onager in your fleet somewhere if you can stand the points in the officer slot. Other big thing that you got to remember is that ECM will ready at the end of the round, not the beginning of the next round. So Hondo Onager cannot be used as an emergency solution to this. He must be used preemptively in the round that you plan on using the ECM for the first time, so that you can use him to ready. For example, round 2, you see that, well, my tank ship is probably going to take a hit from this onager here. You say, alright, I'm going to Hondo, get that token. The onager shoots you, don't spend the token. You use ECM to ready the token. There you go. You cannot take the shot on 2 and then wait until the beginning of 3 and say, oh no, I want a Hondo. Hondo will not be on, will not give you that token until the window to refresh that ECM is already passed. So you need to be able to see that coming a turn in advance and make sure that token's on there. You can, the CommsNet Flotilla option is a little more forgiving. You can do it during the turn. Now, one thing I will say is it kind of activation locks yourself a little bit if your tank ship is going fast, because you have to keep them close enough to your flotilla that it can receive that token. You don't want the tanking ship to activate away and get outside of that CommsNet Flotilla's range, and that has happened before. That's a big part of how you work to get your fleet to approach an onager well. So something to keep in mind. So as we've said in previous videos, one of the things that the onager does is it hits you from very far away. So it gets the chance to attrition you down over several rounds if it can keep you in arc. Another thing that's very common from onagers is accuracy generation, whether it be from sensor teams or gunnery chief Vernillion. As you can see here, a lot of onagers also use that second weapons team slot to take veteran gunners, which, while not an accuracy generation tool in and of itself, because you can roll your dice, spend your accuracies, and then trigger veteran gunners to reroll anything that wasn't already spent as accuracies, it's almost doubling the chances of rolling an accuracy on your red dice. So you're rolling 4 red dice at least, and picking them up and re-rolling them again. You should expect to get 1 accuracy from those 8 dice if you do that. So it's very likely that there will be 1 accuracy generated from an onager shot, even at extreme range. So because of that, we need to keep in mind that our defensive tech is probably going to need to have some way of circumventing a single accuracy. So things with duplicate tokens are going to be strong here. Things with ECM or thermal shields or some way of getting benefit out of a token that's not tied to an accuracy, that can't be stopped by an accuracy, is going to be big here. So we'll start with the Rebels. They're probably their best two candidates are the Assault Frigate and the MC-30. The reason for this is their base size is smaller than an Onager, and they have multiple defensive tokens that can reduce damage from Onagers at long range. So, Assault Frigate's got a brace and an evade, can take the ECM slot and make sure that one of those gets used. Often they won't generate two accuracy, so often both of them will get used. There's not a lot of damage coming from an Onager that gets its dice both evaded at extreme and braced. You'll probably take 1 to 2. And like I said, if you've got a repair command coming, they do 1 to 2, you repair it right back, and they've done nothing. And so, like I said, Armada's on a time clock. If you can, it's only going to ever get to shoot 6 times, probably not going to shoot 5 times unless it's got Cataclysm and you to deploy into it. And if it shoots you at a long range on turn 2 and does nothing, it's gone a third of the game without firing. And so that's a big win for you. Foresight on a MC-30 is also pretty discouraging. Being able to just outright cancel 3 dice at long range isn't as good as probably as bracing and evading, but it's pretty dang solid, and you can discard in a pinch, though I wouldn't advise it, because you want that dual token option to be able to evade. Even if they get an accuracy, I would really hang on to that evade token as long as you can. But a Foresight is another good option, and hopefully its speed prevents it from taking more than one shot from an Onager round after round. Imperial surprisingly don't have a lot of other good tank options. Interdictors are just too slow. There's not a lot of dual token ships. Vics are obviously way too slow. In fact, I think anything speed 2 has a really hard time justifying itself in an Onager world. So we come back to the old standby, the Star Destroyer. I think Captain Nita and ECM are probably the answer here, because you got, again, 2 tokens that can be used to reduce damage, and ECM to make sure one of them gets used, forcing 2 accuracies to actually stop both of them from happening, which is kind of a big ask for an Onager. Separatists and clones, I would advise to take thermal shields instead of ECM, just because of ease of use. It's going to be easier to keep online, and it can cut the black dice out of a Onager shot, which is a big part of their damage spike. 2 ships that are very good at this. We have the Munificent Star Frigate and the Providence. Both of them can take thermals, and if I'm going to take a Muni these days, I'm going to take the title that gives it the ability to use any token as an evade. So once again, we've created a situation where you can thermal the dice, and you'll have a salvo and an evade token, a salvo and a redirect token that you can use either one of them as an evade. Once again, forcing the production of 2 accuracies to prevent that from being utilized. So you thermal it, you evade it. It's pretty good. This is one of the few speed 2 ships that I would advise taking in a competitive situation, because of its ability. That title and the thermals together make it very tough. It's not quite as good as squad pusher, but if you're going to run a Muni, to me that's the way to do it. Providence carrier, basically any Providence that can take a single defensive retrofit at least, and Wat Tambor. Wat Tambor plus a thermal shield. Yeah, you only have 1 token to use, but you're going to get to use it because of thermal shields. And Wat Tambor, between his native, if you put repair dials on that thing, you're going to make 2 shields, plus you're going to pull some more shields. You'll probably make 2 or 3 shields from Wat Tambor over the course of the game as well. And so this is going to give you the tanking factor that you need, that you simulate the same effect that you would get out of that evade. So these are 2 good options for Separatists. Honorable mention goes to the Hard Sell Battle Refit, just because, and this is not a ship that I would center my whole fleet around. I'm just saying it can take a defensive retrofit. It makes it an expensive ship, a more expensive ship. One of their biggest strengths is their efficiency in points cost to durability. This ECM option here, or thermal option here, gives it the ability to have a brace and an evade and be on a chassis that's smaller than an Onager. It fits all that criteria. I'm not saying this is a good ship to use as your centerpiece, because you're paying a little more than I would like to for a hard sell, but it's a good option. It fits into our formula. And finally we come to clones, and I think that they are the faction that's most affected by the Onager Unfortunately, I think that the Onager's ability to hit them from a long way away is a concern, and their lack of maneuverability is also a concern. They're not very good at doing that whole umbrella spreading and tightening the noose on an Onager. They pretty much just have to drive at it. And in a lot of cases, I think a clone fleet, I think you just bunch up and go fast, and you try to jump in there quick and just, charge it, basically. Like charging a machine gun. That's not trying to flank it. Thermal shields is really good here. Tranquility is really good here. Most of their mediums don't have access to an evade, which is another big reason why they are not strong against Onagers. So that's something to consider. The other options are Charger. When the Charger has a single evade, which will get accuracy away, so you will not get use of that. That's why Chargers I don't think they're very good, because they're a small ship with a single damage reducing token that will get locked down, and they're going to take it, and it's high likelihood to either get maimed so badly that the supporting cast of Imperials can easily kill it, or outright killed in one shot. The Chargers are hard to do, and Peltas, while having a brace and having evade, they don't have access to a defensive retrofit, so the better of the two tokens will get locked down, and their speed too. So they're cheap. Their biggest benefit is that they are cheap. And because of their cheapness and their utility, they're not terrible. I could see them being used, but again, they don't fit the mold, and they're also speed 2, so they're kind of a liability. So if you're playing clones, I feel like you kind of need thermal shields or ECMs, and just hope, because I think that they are a poor matchup against Onagers, especially with slow-moving squadrons. This is also kind of why you don't see rebel squad balls as much anymore, because slow-moving squad balls that wander into range over the course of a couple turns will get pounded into dust under the guns of 1 to 2 Onagers. Thank you for watching. I hope this was informative to you. Again, the big takeaway is that you do not want to take damage from an Onager 5 times in a game. You want to try to neutralize the round 1 shot, and you want to try to either get in there and kill it and silence it within a turn or two, or you want to, delay the game out and not take a shot on 2, take a weak shot on 3 that you repair away, and then they're hitting you on 4, and by 4 your fleet's in position and you can kill it. What you don't want to do is take, a shot on 2, a strong shot on 3, and you're going into 4, and you're placed down inside the arc, and you're taking that nasty, like, inside of black range hit from an Onager as your first or second activation on 4, because that's when it's going to peel open a ship, kill it, and if it's in a bad way, it'll go 1 to 3 and get out of there. That's the scenario you're wanting to avoid. So as many shots as you can nullify or take away, the better. Because at the end of the day, it's just a ship with 10 hull points. You can kill it. You can, you can destroy it. It has to be aimed. It's not an auto win ship. It's, it does take a good bit of skill and vision to employ. And so like that, we got to recognize that. We got to say that up front, that yes, this is not an easy button ship to use. It's just a concern because it's put into the same faction as the faction with the longest range bomber options in Reimer, the longest range squadron options in Squall plus a speed 5 TIE Defender, and the same faction as, the squadron package that has arguably the most consistent and most long-ranging damage in the whole game of Steel Engine and Movement Speed 5 or 5 plus Squall, and doing 2 damage with almost a 90% success rate, and then tapping it again and doing another 2 damage with about a 90% success rate. So the ability to basically put down 4 damage at distance 7 in a self-contained package that's less than 45 points. All that in the same faction as the Onager is why Imperials are so overwhelmingly taken and why they're so overwhelmingly superior, because poor game design of putting all that in the same faction. This ship should not have been given to the Empire. This ship should have been given to the clones. This ship should have been given to CIS, maybe even to Rebels, but I would have much preferred a long-range standoff option given to one of the factions that doesn't have this already impressive, overawing ranged attack built into it. This is an example of a company making a ship, making rules to fit a ship, not making not taking a ship and saying, well, where does this fit into our game to make it a balanced game? They just said, oh, we're going to make an Onager. It's an Imperial ship. Boom, with no consideration to, well, does this fit in the faction? Is this good for our game as a whole from a balancing perspective? Unfortunately, that's what we're stuck with. So because that's what we're stuck with, we now have to use everything in our power to try to combat it. I still think it was a bad design choice. I still think we shouldn't be spamming it and abusing it, because we can all see that it's a bad design choice. We all understand why it's a bad design choice. So to just continue to lean on that, that concept is a disservice to the rest of us who are trying to play straight up Armada with fleets that aren't busted. Take all this information from video 1, video 2, and video 3 together. Try to put them, implement them into your fleets. I'm going to come back with one more video, I think, trying to focus on how all the fleets, how to attack an Onager fleet, because I've talked about, fighting an Onager in a vacuum, from a positioning standpoint, how to build a fleet to withstand an Onager shot, and I've kind of talked about some of the basic concepts that you need to try to avoid letting happen from an Onager. Now I want to try to, and this video is probably going to take some time to make, to try to set up some examples of how we can dissect an Onager fleet, and hopefully that will be the wrap up to this. That will hopefully help you guys combat this, because it's not going away. The sad truth of it is that there is not a whole lot of development going on right now that I can see. And I would like to think that we, the community, would recognize there's no development team, would recognize that this is obviously too strong, and recognize that, hey, if it's too strong and there's nobody that's going to rein us in, we need to rein ourselves in. But you can't count on that, because gamers take the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is to take the easiest thing that wins the most with the least amount of effort. That's not I don't applaud it, and I don't do it, and I don't like it, but that's the sad truth of humans. As long as you got people involved in it, that's what they'll do. So be prepared for it. Be prepared to fight back against it. It can be beaten, but it takes practice, it takes skill, and it takes determination.